And how's everybody doing? I'm Jay Elsen, and this is Coyote Corner. Well, South Dakota stumbled at Missouri State last week, but the worst news came from the training room. Coyotes lost two starters, running back Trevor Bama and right tackle Derek Chancellor, to season-ending injuries. Throw in tight end Aaron Ramsey, who was injured the week before against Northern Iowa, and USD will be moving forward without three of its top guys on offense. Not a great position to be in when you're getting ready to face the three-time defending national champs. But that's the hand that's been dealt. So Joe Glenn and the Coyotes would employ the next man up philosophy for Saturday's much-anticipated battle with number 1 North Dakota State. The Bison riding a 31-game winning streak, making their first appearance in Vermilion since 2002. NDSU up 6-0 in the second when the defense makes a play. Esley Thornton forces the Jordan Roberts fumble. Christian Dudzik recovers, and the Bison take over at the USD 41. And that would set up this. John Crockett bounces off a tackle and into the end zone. 10-yard touchdown helps the Bison build a 20-0 lead. Coyotes find a bit of a spark with under 5 minutes to go in the half. Austin Johnson drops Carson Wentz, just the second sack of the season for USD, and it forces an NDSU punt. The Yotes get good field position out of that. They would make the most of it. Kevin Earl with a great throw to Eric Shuford. 20 yards down to the NDSU 27. Moments later, Coyotes elect to go for it on 4th and inches, and Earl converts to keep the drive alive. That was big because 2 plays later, Earl hooks up with Riley Donovan. Great catch, 10-yard touchdown. Donovan's first of the year, and it's 20-7 with 35 seconds to play in the half. That was enough for the Bison. They move it into field goal range for Adam Keller. And on the final play of the first half, the senior splits the sticks from 49 yards out. Bison up 16 at the break. Coyotes got it first to start the second half, but they wouldn't have it for long. Earl picked off for the second time on the day, this time by Nick DeLuca. He takes it down to the USD 27. First down, Bison. And they would make the Coyotes pay once again. Wentz wants 6, and he'll get it thanks to a great grab by R.J. Urzendowski. 27 yards, part of a huge day for the true freshman, who finished with 4 catches for 107 yards in that score. Bison split 524 yards of total offense, nearly right down the middle, and they win it by a count of 47-7, extending the nation's longest winning streak to 32 games. John Crockett and King Frazier each went for over 100 yards on the ground, while Wentz threw for 231 and 3 touchdowns. As for the Coyotes, Earl completed 14 of 28 passes for 104 yards, 1 touchdown, and those 2 interceptions, while Jasper Sanders put up 67 yards on 23 carries.
We hate losing to any team, but, I mean, they're the real deal. They're ranked number 1, won 32 games now in a row, so, I mean, they're the good team. I mean, that's all I got to say.
It's tough to judge the game based on the scoreboard. I feel like we did trade some blows with them. We took some and we dished them out as well, but we just kind of let the game of football beat us a little bit, and against a team like that, you got to play perfect and be perfect, and that wasn't really what happened today.
While their performance fell well short of perfect, there were a handful of bright spots for the Coyotes on Saturday. We'll uncover those with head coach Joe Glenn after this.
Coyote Corner on Midco Sports Network is presented by Billionauto.com.
And welcome back to Coyote Corner. Jay Elsen down at the Dakota Dome with head coach, the University of South Dakota Coyotes, Joe Glenn. And Joe, coming off a loss to North Dakota State on Saturday. And let's get into this game a little bit. Starting on the defensive side, I thought that group did some good things early on. Bent but didn't break over the first quarter and change, allowed just a couple of field goals, but held the Bison out of the end zone.
Yeah, I think we came up with a different scheme for him a little bit and freed up number 33, Kian Lagi. I thought he had a terrific game, and Kian was all over the place. And after a quarter and a half, it felt like we were fighting with him pretty good.
Absolutely. Well, you can never afford, as you know, to give a good team extra opportunities, but unfortunately we saw that a little bit on Saturday. Early in the second quarter, Jordan Roberts fumbles the football. They recover. 3 plays later, they're in the end zone.
Just a backbreaker. Just you can't totally collapse as a team, but I think it let a little of the air out of what we had going on.
Well, Bison went on to build a 20-0 lead, but that's when the Coyotes started to make a few things happen. I know you talked a lot last week about needing guys to step up and just make some plays for you. And a couple of guys delivered for you in the later stages of that first half, and Austin Johnson was one of them. He takes down Carson Wentz to force a Bison punt. It's a quarterback sack, which something had been lacking for you defensively. But, hey, you got to start somewhere, right?
That's right. We're making some more plays. We made a play in special teams when our punter threw a ball to Jordan Roberts. We made a play for a touchdown on a real good corner. These are plays, if we'll start making a few more of them, we'll be in some games.
Yeah, let's talk about that touchdown, though. I mean, because off of the Austin Johnson sack, they punt it away. You get some pretty good field position. The offense takes advantage of it. They move it down into the red zone. And then Riley Donovan, again, nice play. Makes a great catch in the end zone for a touchdown. You've got some momentum heading in toward the half.
I thought our quarterback did a nice job of working us down the field, moving the ball around, distributing the ball a little bit, little run, little pass. And then he threw the touchdown pass to Riley Donovan, who elevated really well, made the big catch, and that's something we hadn't done lately.
NDSU did take a little of that momentum back with a field goal in the final play of the half. That gave them a 23-7 lead at the break. You got it first to start the third quarter, but another costly turnover. Kevin Earl intercepted by Nick DeLuca. It leads to another NDSU touchdown. What happened on that play?
The floodgates got opened. We had a slant coming in from the outside and then an arrow route going out, and they hung on the slant. And quarterback's got to see that. You know, you can't force it in there. That ball should have gone to the flat. We think we'd have caught it and made a first down with it. And those are the things right now our quarterback's got to take care of us. He's got to make really good choices about the right read.
Now, that play and the subsequent touchdown certainly did feel like it sucked a little more of the air out of your team. But at the same time, the offense continued to move the football. They got into the Bison territory 3 more times on the day, but as we've seen the past few games, just unable to finish the drives.
Yeah, we need some plays. We need some playmakers. And I will give credit where credit's due. That's really a terrific defense. And nobody else is scoring much on them either. I think they goose-egged some people last year.
Yeah.
And that's terrific defense.
Now it's on to Youngstown State after a 47-7 loss to North Dakota State. You face a Penguins team that's coming off a big win at South Dakota State. They beat the Jackrabbits on their homecoming on Saturday. As you look at Youngstown, what jumps out to you about this team?
They're just a good football team all the way around. I think they can run it, they can throw it. They're really good up front, the offensive line. They spread it around the passing game. And defensively, they've got some tough guys. They gap cancel really well. They've got really good push up front. They've held the score down on quite a few teams that they've played, and I'm impressed with their defense.
All right, well, good luck to you this weekend. Thanks again for your time this week, and we'll see you a bit down the road. All right, well, we've got more on that impending matchup with Youngstown State coming up in a bit, but first, little Fields Vision with Midco SN analyst Andre Fields. Saturday storylines coming up next.
Coyote Corner on Midco Sports Network is presented by BillionAuto.com.
And welcome back. Well, there's Vision, and then there's Fields Vision. And here to give us a little extra insight on USD's loss to North Dakota State is Midco SN analyst Andre Fields. Andre, it's time for Saturday storylines, and it starts with turnovers. As we heard from head coach Joe Glenn a little bit earlier, you can never afford to give a good team extra opportunities. Well, the Coyotes did exactly that on Saturday. They turned it over 3 times, and that led directly to 2 NDSU touchdowns.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we talked about in the open, Jay, is that you don't want to give a good team extra opportunities because you're going to be fighting from behind all day. If you give up 4 turnovers against an average team, it's going to put you in a bad position. But to do it against a team of this pedigree, you're going to be fighting from behind. That's just what happened.
Yeah, certain teams certainly feast on those opportunities a little bit more than others. North Dakota State is one of them. Well, the defense, I thought, looked ready to play early on. They held the Bison to a couple of field goals through the first quarter and change of that football game. But you and I wondered aloud during the broadcast if they'd be able to keep that up just because of how long they were being asked to be on the field. And in the end, NDSU held the ball for almost 33 minutes. and that physical running game really took a toll on the Coyotes.
And that's what NDSU does. They wear you down with their running game, and we wondered, is this going to be the case today? They came out guns blazing, great stops in the first quarter, second quarter, but then as you saw, third, fourth quarter, some of the holes started to open up. That then, of course, leads to openings in the secondary, so they had both the passing game and the running game going. And again, that's just what NDSU does. They wear you down, force you into falling asleep in some areas, and then take advantage of it.
500 yards of total offense, 500-plus yards for North Dakota State on Saturday. Split it almost down the middle. Great balance showed by them, but it started with those guys up front and that physical running game with guys like John Crockett and King Frazier. Well, in a loss like this, it's easy to overlook the individual numbers, but a couple of guys on that defense I thought had very good days. Kean Logge was one of them. He finished with 8 tackles, including 1 for loss. He also broke up a pass and got credit for a quarterback hurry. Afterward, Logge said he was just trying to do his part.
I did what everybody else did. I just tried as hard as I possibly could. I'm spent right now. The whole defense is spent. We tried. We gave everything we possibly could. I guess it just wasn't enough in the end. So defensively, everybody gave everything they had, and that's all I try to do for my team.
Overall, I think Logge's been a little quiet this season, largely because he's getting more attention than ever from the opposing team's blockers. But this looked like the guy that we got used to seeing over the last couple of years.
Yeah, this was the guy that we were expecting to see all year long, but you mentioned it, Jay. When teams are starting to focus on you now being the man, you're going to get those double teams. You're going to get schemes against you, and so they were able to kind of limit him. But today, we saw him flying around making plays in the backfield, at the line of scrimmage, in the secondary. He was completely all over the place. He definitely stood out.
Yeah, the other guy that stood out to me was Logge's fellow linebacker, Austin Johnson. He, too, had 8 tackles, which is a season high for him. Johnson also, though, notched the Coyotes' 2nd sack of the season. Great performance out of him. And it was from the defensive line position, which is not a position that he normally plays. He was lining up on the D-line due to some injuries and things up there, but able to use his athleticism to get around those big guys, set up some moves where he went outside, came inside, and got that much-needed pressure that USD hasn't been able to get a lot this season. Yeah, I'm sure the Coyotes would love to see those guys continue that moving forward here over the last month or so of the season. Finally, Coach Glenn has talked a lot about the last few weeks about the lack of big plays made by his football team, and I thought the Coyotes took a small step in the right direction in that department against NDSU. Johnson's sack was one of those plays. The other was the touchdown catch by Riley Donovan. I'd put both of those in that quote-unquote big play category. Still not enough of them, but it's a start.
Yeah, and that's what you got to have. In a game like this, you want to look at the positives. I'm sure those are the 2 plays that Coach Glenn's going to go in and say, let's build off of this and then go into next week strong.
All right. Thanks a lot, Andre, for your time again this week. The Coyotes will be looking to hit a few more of those big plays this weekend at Youngstown State. We'll preview the matchup with the Penguins when we come back.
Coyote Corner on Midco Sports Network is presented by BillionAuto.com.
And welcome back. Well, for the final time in 2014, the Coyotes are set to play a game outside of the state of South Dakota. It's slated for Saturday afternoon at Youngstown State. The Penguins are flying high after Saturday's 30-27 upset of South Dakota State, which was their first win in Brookings since 1974. True freshman quarterback Hunter Wells threw for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns, while sophomore Martin Ruiz added 132 yards and a score on 20 carries. Youngstown, by the way, now 6-2 overall and 3-1 in the Valley. For more on Youngstown State, we bring in Bob Hannon, who's in his 24th season as the voice of the Penguins. And Bob, let's start with that young quarterback. Hunter Wells wasn't expected to be the guy this season, but he's taken that job and run with it. What's allowed him to be so successful?
He does things that you wouldn't expect out of a true freshman. He looks off receivers. He'll check down to the 2nd or 3rd receiver. Seems to always get us in the right play. He just makes good decisions. 8 touchdown passes, just 1 interception. And I think he gives us that true passer that we didn't have once Kurt Hess left. We had a 4-year starter at quarterback in Hess, and that was the big question mark coming in. But I think he has those intangibles that you look for in a quarterback, but he also has a strong arm, and he's very talented.
Now, any quarterback's going to be helped by a good running game, and the Penguins certainly have that. We saw how good Martin Ruiz was last year, and he's picked up right where he left off.
There's been no sophomore slump, and what makes Martin so good is he doesn't fumble the football very often anyway, and he seems to get better as the game goes on. And what's helped this year is that Jody Webb's come on, so Jody's been able to give Martin a little bit of a breather. You'll see both of them in the game at some time. But Martin Ruiz is very talented. He can run between the tackles. He can run over you. He can run around you. And Youngstown State, like most teams, wants to run the football. And we certainly have a very talented running back. We have two of them, and the good news is they're both only sophomores.
Now, looking at this week, Bob, coming off that big win at South Dakota State, what are the coaches doing to keep this team grounded as they prepare to take on the Coyotes?
I don't think they feel they've arrived, that they're ready to compete for a playoff or a national championship. So I don't think that they're thinking that they're better than anybody yet. And they're also, as I said, very hungry to get back to the playoffs. Also, I think Coach Wolfer will remind the team about the game last year. YSU had to score late. It was a very good game, went back and forth. I know Youngstown State believes that South Dakota is very well coached. Coach Wolfer talked early in the year about who he thought were the really good coaches in the league, and he felt South Dakota was as well coached as anyone. So I think all of that. It's a hungry team. They haven't had success in terms of getting to the playoffs, and the game last year was so competitive that I don't think anybody here thinks it's just going to be a walk in the park.
All right, that again, Bob Hannon, the voice of Youngstown State football. Well, the Coyotes and Penguins square off this Saturday in Youngstown. Kickoff at Stambaugh Stadium is slated for 12 p.m. Central Time, and it's going to be chilly. Forecast calling for a high of 41 degrees with a 40% chance of rain mixed with snow. I will be braving those elements for you, so be sure to follow along for updates on Twitter at Elsen Midco SN. Well, as we mentioned earlier, injuries have been mounting for South Dakota in recent weeks, and that's meant more work for this guy. We'll have more on the man that helps the Coyotes heal after this.
Coyote Corner on Midco Sports Network is presented by BillionAuto.com.
In the game of football, injuries are an inevitability, a fact that USD is certainly no stranger to. In a season that's seen a number of impact players miss significant time through a variety of injuries and ailments, the Coyotes have been leaning heavily on the expertise of their training staff to keep the team moving forward. With more on the man who's been getting South Dakota back to full strength for the past 3 decades, here's Alex Heinert.
When the University of South Dakota's Derek Chancellor went down with a leg injury on October 18th against Missouri State, the junior right tackle was optimistic he'd be back on the field sooner rather than later.
I got my legs taken out from under me, and I was just laying there, and at the time they thought it was just maybe a sprained ankle, and we were hoping that it was just a really bad sprain until I got x-rays.
Those x-rays revealed he had broken a bone in his leg, sidelining him for the rest of the 2014 season. Chancellor's injury was one of many on a tough day for Coyote football and a busy one for its sports medicine team, a crew that's been led by head athletic trainer Bruce Fishback since 1986. When it comes to football, Fishback has come to expect days like this.
It seems like every year we have kind of, there's going to be that group of injuries that happen. This year we thought we were kind of rolling along pretty good. Maybe we'd have one of those years where we didn't have that same amount of injuries, and then last week happened. We literally had 6 guys go down in one football game, which was a lot.
With key players like Chancellor, Trevor Bama, and Aaron Ramsey all ruled out for the season, it's not hard to imagine that Joe Glenn and the coaching staff have become wary of conversations with the head trainer.
When's surgery?
Tuesday. We're gonna meet with the doctor on Monday, and then surgery's on Tuesday. It's funny because every time you stop in to see coaches, they think you're bringing bad news. You know, sometimes I feel like I should have, like a black robe and a sickle, like the angel of death or something.
And yet, thanks to modern medicine, the news Fishback has to bear these days isn't as bad as it used to be.
We're doing such a good job medically anymore. The expertise from the physicians who are doing surgeries and are testing to see what's wrong, everything's become so advanced that there isn't a lot that we can't fix.
Fishback's excellence in the sports medicine field hasn't gone unnoticed, as this past summer he was inducted into the South Dakota Athletic Trainers Association Hall of Fame.
Very cool honor, to be recognized by your peers and by the peers you work very closely with.
Even if the award is humbling, it's not difficult to see that it's merited, given the level of effort and aid Fishback provides to the athletes he cares for.
Still there. Yep. Remind me to talk to him about when we need to x-ray that next.
He's drove me to Sioux City to see a doctor, and really got all the appointments lined up and wraps my leg up and puts my boot on and really been under my arm and helped me in everything I do every step of the way.
Chancellor's season-ending diagnosis was hard to take, but the McCook, Nebraska native found perspective in a conversation he had with Fishback in the week following the injury.
Yeah, he told me that the greatest game you'll ever play is the one in the backyards with your kids. It just means, football doesn't last your whole life. Even though injury takes a season away from you or whatever, life will go on, and a lot of other things will happen to your life that you have to look forward to.
And while Fishback's main job is to get USD's athletes back on the field as soon as possible, his most important role might be helping them get ready for life after their playing time is done.
My focus is always, what can I do to make sure that I've ensured their health for the long term? The game's important, the season's important, but I want to make sure that they are good for their life.
What great perspective from a man that's been around Coyote athletics for a long time. Thankfully for South Dakota fans, Bruce Fishback and his sports medicine team weren't nearly as busy this weekend against North Dakota State, as no serious Coyote injuries were sustained against the Bison, Jay. That's a big boost for Joe Glenn and company as they gear up for the final stretch of the season.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Thanks, Alex. So again, the Coyotes are at Youngstown State this Saturday, but looking a bit farther down the road, the team has made an announcement concerning a future opponent. This one coming from the FBS ranks. South Dakota will take on the University of California, Berkeley on September 3rd, 2016. It'll be the first ever meeting with the Golden Bears and the Coyotes' second game against a Pac-12 opponent in the span of 3 years, with this year's season opener against Oregon being the other. Coyotes, remember, do have Kansas State on the schedule in 2015 as well. Now, for the latest on South Dakota football, be sure to check out MidcoSN.com and the Coyote Corner video blog. Alex and I will take another look at this week's matchup with Youngstown State in a post on Wednesday. All right, that is our time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here next week for another edition of Coyote Corner.